Hello, everybody. Welcome to Referee Timeout. I'm Mike Baumgardner, Director of Officiating for the APP Tour and a USAP certified referee.
And I am Bob Swissell. I'm also a USA Pickleball certified referee, and I am a member of the head ref team for the APP Tour.
So, welcome to episode 11 of Referee Timeout. In this particular episode, we're going to talk about what does the referee look for and what is the referee doing prior to the serve of the ball. So, there are many different things that the referee is doing. It may look like they're just keeping score out there for you, but they're actually doing a lot of other things to manage the match itself. And before the service of the ball and calling of the score, there are several different mechanics. I'll use the word mechanics that the referee is trained to do in order to ensure that the serve is properly conducted. Bob?
Thank you. When we train our referees, one of the things I generally tell them is that the serve is one of the most complicated aspects of the referee because you have a heck of a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of things going on. In fact, the very first thing that happens is even before you lift your head as a referee to begin to call the score to see if people are ready, the very first thing that you do is you look at your score sheet and you say, well, who, based upon the score sheet, is the correct server and what is their correct position? Who is the correct receiver and what is their correct position? So in my mind, I already know what I expect to see. And then when I look up, I then validate that the reality matches what I did. And then if there is some type of problem, one of the nice things that happened in August of about a year or so ago is that the USA Pickleball Board of Directors said, hey, wait a minute, we're going to get rid of one of these gotcha faults. You now have, as a referee, the responsibility to correct players that are the incorrect server or the incorrect position. So that's one of the very first things we do. We look up and we say, hey, you go over there.
Yeah, so friend of the show, Greg, had written me instant message and was asking about this very same thing, Bob. So the question that he's posing to us is, how do we understand how we replay, or is it a fault if, in fact, after the rally, you've identified that a player or a receiver or a server was out of position? So he's asking the question, if you've identified that after the rally is over, is it a fault or a replay?
Very good question, Greg. And I want to put a little bit of a advertisement in. If you want to become a friend of the show, send us email to referee.timeout@gmail.com. We're happy to take your suggestions and your questions. Also, please like this episode, all our episodes, and also subscribe to us, and that's how you become our friend. So let's talk about the three different times when that type of problem, player out of position or a incorrect server is identified. I've already mentioned what happens before the serve occurs if the referee actually detects it. They just adjust it. Okay. Then the second time that that could be detected is that the rally is ongoing, and then the referee may realize, oh, wait a minute, I screwed up. I didn't detect this, and now I need to deal with it. Or a player may deal with that. The referee, if they are 100% sure, should, they're not required to, but they should stop play and say, wait a minute, referee correction. The rally configuration is not what we want. It's not correct. So let's replay the rally. As a player, you have that same right to do that anytime during the rally. However, realize that you are putting yourself potentially at risk, right? If you are not 100% sure or if you are wrong, then by stopping play without a valid reason, you will then lose that rally. So, our strong recommendation is that okay, put it in the back of your mind, but let it go and then focus on the rally so that you can be focused on winning that rally. Okay. Then coming back to it was Gary or Greg. I'm sorry.
Greg, it was Greg.
Greg, our friend of the
Greg,
show,
yeah.
Greg.
Hmm.
His specific question, well, what happens at the end of the rally? And the short answer is that by rule, the way that the rules committees decided they want to deal with it, they'll say that that particular rally, even though it was an incorrect configuration, was played in good faith. And so therefore, that rally is going to stand. There will not be a replay. There will not be a fault. It will simply stand, and then the players should be corrected for the beginning of the next rally. Now, that is different than it was a year and a half ago, right? A year and a half ago, before this rule was implemented,
Right.
if you
Right.
detected that the player was out of position or the incorrect server, it actually would have been a fault on the server, but that is no longer the case. Very good
prior
question,
to the
Greg.
next prior to the next serve. Yeah, it's a
Right?
great question, Greg, and we appreciate you asking, and we're happy to answer. So let me ask you real quick, Bob. So this application of that particular rule applies to refereed and non-refereed matches, right? So there's no
Correct.
difference in the interpretation of the rule, regardless of if there's a referee or if there's not a referee.
Correct. Now, the again, I would personally, my personal recommendation is that you don't, if I was in an unofficiated match, if I want to challenge it before the serve, hey, you're in the wrong position. Yeah, I'll do that. Or I would do it at the end of the rally and correct them for the next rally. Personally, I would never ever stop play because then you're going to get into a potential disagreement. No, I'm the correct
Mm.
server. This is where I served. And there's this that gets really messy. So I would really strongly suggest, even though you have the right in an unofficiated match to stop play and correct that, I would kind of suggest against that.
Yeah, I think the rules committee's done a real nice job with this particular rule and enabling the rally stands in good faith measure as part of the application. I really enjoy that part of it. So what else is happening on the serve, Bob? And when you're the referee, what else are you looking for here? We've covered that one
The
pretty
next
well.
thing I've looked up, I've verified that everybody's in position or kind of getting into that position. Next thing we need to do is to look for player readiness. So let me ask you, you've been asking me questions, Mike. I want to ask you questions. As the referee, which players do I need to confirm readiness for?
Well, the first player I'm looking for as a referee is the receiver, right? But all four players have to be ready for play before the serve,
Okay. And
before I
then
should start calling the score.
and that's a key consideration. So if somebody's walking back from retrieving a ball, you shouldn't be calling the score. And the point
Mhm.
that you made earlier about unofficiated play, this really applies to you as the server. If you're getting ready to serve to your opponents, you have a responsibility as the server to make sure that your opponents are ready before you begin to call the score. Um, what are the not ready signals, or what am I looking for as a referee?
Yeah, so one of the not ready signals would be paddle up, above the shoulder, and then, if they got your back turned to the net. Those are two particular not ready signals that a referee would look for.
Okay, so if I see my two players are kind of chit chatting, they're at the baseline and one's kind of bouncing the ball. Are they ready?
Yeah, theoretically they're ready to play,
Right,
but as a referee, it's very unlikely I'm going to call that because
right,
player experience and just a courtesy for the players. If they're going to sit there and chit chat for a little while, then I'm going to say, okay, players, let's go. Right.
right,
So you may hear that from the referee, but they're not actually giving a non-ready signal.
right. So we have again as we have the responsibility for ensuring that all four players are ready. There's a key phrase in there, or should be ready before we call the score. So if we realize that the player is a lollygagging either on purpose or accidentally, we have a variety of tools up and either go ahead and calling the score, or actually up to the point of issuing verbal warnings as necessary, or yelling at them, whatever, to get them onto court. So we have a variety of things. It is our responsibility as a referee to manage the flow of the game. We're going to be reasonable, we're going to be fair, we're going to be balanced, but we're not going to allow people just to lollygag. All right, so the players are we may find, Mike, that we have to, because there's so much going on. This may We may have to break this one into two parts as well.
Well, we're at
Because
8 minutes right now, so we better speed it along,
yeah.
or we just go
So
a little longer. Either way.
now the players are ready, and I am getting ready to call the score. I've got my hand up. One of the reasons why I have my hand up is because I want to have some type of visual indicator to you, the players, that I'm getting ready to call the score. And then I am going to focus initially on the receiver. because the receiver has up until the time that I begin calling the score to become not ready. And we talked about what those not ready signals are. So I'm looking at them and say, okay, the receiver is really ready. I begin calling the score and then I change my focus to the server. Because if the server's not ready, which is unusual because I probably already checked for them, but if the server's not ready at that point, I may, oh, hey, I'll recall the score. But technically, I really don't care what the server is doing until they strike the ball. That's why I'm focused on the receiver first, and then I switch my focus over to the server, and then I am waiting until they strike the ball to make sure that they comply to whatever type of serve it is that they're getting ready to do. Any comments on
Yeah,
that,
so
Mike?
yeah, just real quick, the referee is trained to call the first number looking at the receiver, right? And with the hand motion. So all referees should be looking at the receiver saying 002, turning their head on the last two numbers so they can focus on the serve. So, can anybody become not ready after I've started calling the score, Bob?
You the short answer is it's not a fault, but you are ignored. So the referees are trained to ignore not ready signals once they begin calling the score. So you may put up the referee is looking at you as the receiver. You begin calling the score, and then you raise your hand or raise your paddle. You're going to get ignored. Now, a caveat. Remember, I mentioned that I'm looking at the receiver. I begin calling the score. If I look over at that exact instant and I realize that the server has their hand up, I technically don't know whether or not they did that before I began calling the score or now. And so me personally, I would accept that. Oh, I'm sorry. I would have checked them a couple seconds ago, but it's quite possible that they put their
Hmm.
hand up. So in that case, I would allow it. But if I look over at them and then they're clearly ready and then they raise their hand, I'm going to ignore that. So the rule is you ignore not ready signals, but what can they do, Mike, before the serve to get my attention? What
Well,
rights do they
so
have?
yeah, so a few things. Little coaching tip here for all you players out there. There are three questions that you can ask to stop play before the actual striking of the ball for the serve. So you can ask, what's the score? Am I in the right position? And what's the third one, Bob? Testing you here.
Am I the correct server?
Correct. So those are the three questions that you can ask to stop play.
Do you
Even
have
though
to ask them in that
you can't,
specific frame? Do you have to use those words?
you could say, wait, am I the correct server or the correct receiver? Am I in the correct position? Or, hey, referee, what is the score?
Or you can say something like, Am I good?
Yeah, oh yeah, you could say, am I good?
Which
Am I
is kind
good?
of an encapsulation of all of those. So the point I'm making there is you don't have to use exactly those words. We will interpret, hopefully correctly, what the intent of your question is.
Yeah, so just a little coaching tip there. You can't give a non-ready signal after the start of the calling of the score, but you can ask a question. One of those three questions, or am I good?
Right. So, and the reason why he says that that's a coaching tip is we see this reasonably frequently. I've called the score, and the player is bouncing the ball as I am calling the score, and then it gets out of control, right? And so they lose control of the ball, and now the ball they're chasing after the ball, and they realize that they only have 10 seconds to serve from the time that I call the score. So they're now frustrated, and they come back, and then they just kind of whack at the ball, and then they hit it into the net. The point that Mike is making is that calm yourself down. Number one, you've got 10 seconds, and 10 seconds is
Hmm.
a huge
It's
amount
a
of
long
time.
time. Yeah.
But secondly, if you want to reset, all you got to do is ask one of those three questions. What was the score again? And then the
Hmm.
referee will step up and says, I will recall the score. You have five, you have seven, check for readiness again, and away you go. So that
Yeah. So
that is a wonderful tip.
yeah, the referee's obligated to restart. So what would you say? Reset everything.
Right,
That's a great
right.
phrase. Reset. So another question for you, Bob. Um, what else can I do to stop play once you've called the score?
What else do we want you to do, or what else can you
No,
do?
what else can you do? What else is
Okay.
legally okay to do? I can
Um,
call a timeout, right? I
oh,
can
thank
call a
you. Thank you.
timeout. Yeah,
Yeah,
no
we
problem.
talked about this earlier, but
Yeah.
yes, you can actually call out, you can call a timeout up until the strike of the ball. And the key thing there to remember is that, um, and people do this, it is perfectly legal to ice the server, is the phrase that people use, right? So everything's ready. I've called the score. You, as the receiver, are watching the server, and the server's doing their backswing. And right before they strike the ball, you go tuh for timeout, right?
Hmm.
And that's perfectly legal. And we see that not all the time, but reasonably frequently. And so I, as the referee, I'm watching the server, but I also have my ears on, right? So I'm watching and I'm listening both for the strike of the ball, the sound of the strike of the ball, and then if I happen to hear the T from timeout, I will allow it. So yes, you have up until that time. However, if you mistime that,
Yeah,
and
I was
I
gonna
hear the
say.
crack of the ball, and
Yeah,
then I hear you're tough for the timeout, guess what? What is that, Mike?
that's a fault.
That's a fault. There's a specific rule. I don't remember what the number is, but it says it is a fault on any player, server or receiver, for calling a timeout after the ball has been struck.
Yep.
So, if you're going to ice the server, be careful not to,
Yeah.
ice them too much, right?
You better make sure the referee heard you.
Yeah.
That's right. So what else we got, Bob? We're at 15 minutes right now. And have you got everything covered in this that you want to cover, or is there more to do? If so, let's move on. Let's
I,
cover it.
I well, there's a lot more to cover about the things that we're looking at relating to the serve. We've talked about what the drop serve is and the volley serve, and I would like to have a discussion around what the referee is doing when we're looking for those types of things. And it's probably more than, in my mind, more than just a couple minute conversation. What do you think about breaking this and creating part
Uh,
two?
Perfect.
Okay, so let's do that. So this was episode 11, I think. Again, if you like these episodes, please like them and then also subscribe to them. And then we're going to continue the conversation real quickly, and both of these will be posted. So there's not going to be any suspense. You can actually listen to the rest of this right afterwards.
Yeah, we'll call it a teaser. How's that? Thanks for joining us.
All right, see you guys on the court.